Hello and welcome to a much less scripted video from me. This one's going to be about The Legend of Zelda, which I am pretty confident in my knowledge of, that I probably don't need to run too much off a script, but anyway, this video will be me talking through the Zelda timeline, talking about all the villains, and just trying to figure out their exact nature, specifically whether or not they are an exact reincarnation of Demise's curse. Now, Demise's curse is a pretty integral mechanic to the Zelda universe, as it explains why all the Zelda games can seem so kind of formulaic, with how they have like similar villain. They always have the hero, the princess, and the villain, the Triforce, power, wisdom, courage. But I guess I'm trying to challenge the fact that, or the sentiment that every Zelda villain is a reincarnation of Demise's curse, because sometimes it just doesn't line up. And for this, I will be going with the assumption that for Demise's curse to reincarnate, the previous host has to have died, and a new host has to have been born after the old host died. No inheriting the curse or anything. Because if it wasn't for that, then I would probably just be saying yes for all of them. But this is much more interesting. So, buckle up and enjoy, I guess. The first game in the timeline is Skyward Sword, of which the villain is, well, Demise. He is the original villain, the Demon King from whatever. And he's the one who made the curse in the first place, so I guess he's the original host of the curse? I don't know. Well, it seems pretty obvious. Demise is Demise. Moving quickly along. The next game in the timeline is Minish Cap, and that has Vati as the main villain. However, Minish Cap is not his only appearance. He also appears in the next game in the timeline, Four Swords, which should be fine from a lore standpoint, but then he shows up several games later in the timeline in Four Swords Adventures, and he doesn't die between those entries. At the end of Minish Cap, he's sealed in the Four Sword, and then he just breaks out in Four Swords and is once again sealed. So he's still alive during the events of the games in between Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures. And in between those, we have Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Twilight Princess. So I'm gonna say no for this, but that just seems right, unless the curse was like somehow separated when he was sealed. But like I said, I'm not going with those kind of mechanics. So yeah, Vati, not a reincarnation. And now for the most consistent big bad of the whole Zelda series, the one and only Ganondorf Dragmire himself, King of the Gerudo, Demon King, King of Evil, whatever you want to call him. He is absolutely a reincarnation of Demise's curse. He is the reason why I said no for Vati, because during the interim between Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures, we have Ocarina of Time, where Ganondorf is born, and he breaks into the Sacred Realm, steals the Triforce of Power, and does all his shenanigans. So, yeah, he is definitely a reincarnation of Demise's curse. If for no other reason, then he was the first villain that shows up in Zelda, and also the most recurring, as he comes back in all three of the timelines following Ocarina of Time. So, in Twilight Princess, he is unsuccessful in his break-in attempt to the Sacred Realm, but through the, well, divine prank, he gets the Triforce of Power and influences Xantanol. So, and I'm not going to be considering Zant in this because Zant is just not a main villain at all. So he can't really be a reincarnation of Demise's curse. But anyway, Ganondorf also shows up in Wind Waker, where he breaks out of his seal that was established at the end of the adult timeline in Ocarina of Time, and that he lays so much waste to Hyrule that it was sent away in a biblical flood in order to seal him, I guess. So yeah. Don't even get me started on how much he shows up in the Downfall timeline as the big boar beast form. Literally pure Zelda villainy. He's like, there's a reason he was the first Zelda villain. And, you know, Demise's curse seems to have been made in retrospect to explain Ganondorf and his persistence. So I could yap about this Ganondorf for a very long time, but I think I've made my point very clear. Ganondorf, I have on my little sparse notes, Ganondorf dash yes, 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 yes. Ganondorf most definitely is a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Next up, I will be moving to the adult timeline, and, you know, already discussed Wind Waker Ganondorf. But next in the timeline is Phantom Hourglass, and that has Bellum as its main villain. Bellum, and really just the whole adult timeline in general, is what really made me make this video, so it's going to be interesting. For Bellum, I am saying yes, because while his origins are unclear, it came into existence. There is a window in which it could have came into existence that is after Ganondorf's death in Wind Waker. And considering how there is a possibility that it is a reincarnation of Demise's curse, it really makes it seem so. I put Bellum down as yes, because, well, everything that happened in the Realm of the Ocean King could have went down after Ganondorf was killed, but I'm not super familiar with Phantom Hourglass, so I might be missing a couple of details, but at least for now, I'm gonna say yes. Because the ghost ship was, like, the ghost ship and, like, the pirates looking for all the stuff, they weren't doing that in Wind Waker, so it makes sense that they would have only heard about all that stuff after it came into existence with Bellum after the events of Wind Waker. So this is definitely less confident than Ganondorf, but I'm still going to say yes, Bellum is a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Next up for the DS Zelda games that take place after Wind Waker, we have Spirit Tracks. Now, the main villain of Spirit Tracks is Malladus, and he is very hard to tell. It's very hard to tell whether he's a reincarnation of Demise's curse or not. So it really boils down to how long the settlers of New Hyrule were there. Because the prologue of Spirit Tracks tells you about a story of, like, the War of Spirits, where, you know, the Spirits of Light battled the Demon King Malladus and sealed him underground with the chains that were the Spirit Tracks, and then the spirits weakened, entrusted their power to the settlers of New Hyrule, or the people of New Hyrule. Now, were those people the settlers who came from the Great Sea Wind Waker. Because Nico is still alive, and Spirit Tracks takes place 100 years after Phantom Hourglass. But the whole War of Spirits things, especially in like Zelda games, are usually like thousands of years before the events of the game. So it's not impossible that it took place between Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, but it is just very hard to tell. So I don't want to just put maybe onto Maladus. So just to be safe, I'm gonna say no, because I mean, Maladus did also exist before the War of Spirits, only rose to power during it. And Nico does say us when talking about the people of New Hyrule who the spirits entrusted the land to. So it could really go both ways, but just purely based on vibes, I'm gonna say no, because War of Spirits stuff seems like it would happen, you know, longer than 100 years before, when either Ganondorf or Bellum were still alive. So yeah, Maladus, not a reincarnation. Okay, bumping over to the next timeline over, we have the Child timeline, starting off with Majora's Mask. Now this one is very easy as a big contrast to Maladus. Majora, the main villain who was turned into a mask, corrupted Skull Kid and made the moon fall, he is not a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Now this is very easy because during the time of Majora's Mask, Ganondorf is still alive, and very well. This is the Child timeline where Link warns Zelda of Ganondorf's plan and they just don't open the way to the Sacred Realm, so Ganondorf never gets the Triforce. He is later executed for his treason, but of course, as the cutscenes in Twilight Princess show, that was a failed attempt. He was not properly executed, and he... You know what, that's not important. Ganondorf is still alive during Majora's Mask. Majora is not a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Demise's curse is living on within someone else at that point. So, yeah, not a reincarnation. Now, Twilight Princess has Zant as a villain and also Ganondorf as the main villain, but I already glossed over that in my section on Ganondorf. So, moving on to the next game in the Child timeline, we have Four Swords Adventures. Now, why the multiplayer games are canon, that will always be a mystery to me, but Ganon there, I'm just saying yes because there's no reason why he wouldn't be. I mean, Vati's still alive, but as I've already deduced, Vati is not a reincarnation of Demise's curse, so there's no reason why the new Ganon in Four Swords Adventures wouldn't be. In fact, the curse was previously hosted by the great Ganondorf, could possibly be a point in favor of the new Ganon being a reincarnation, because, well, Ganondorf being quintessential Zelda villain, maybe that became the new nature of the curse, so it just couldn't be hosted in anyone less Zelda villainous. So, Ganondorf, Four Swords Adventures, yes, a reincarnation. Now moving on to our final timeline, we have the Downfall timeline. Now, A Link to the Past has the same Ganon as the Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, so yeah, we already talked about him. So next game in the timeline is Link's Awakening. And now, the win Link's Awakening is just a very weird game altogether. Kind of similar to Majora's Mask in just how, like, dreamy, I guess, it feels. But anyway, that's unimportant. The Windfish's Nightmare is, I guess, the main villain of Link's Awakening. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. No. Like, why would Demise attack an island that only exists in this weird creature's dream? Like, I feel like that kind of falls short of, like, its amazing winning streak up to that point with A Link to the Past. So, like, surely losing to Link didn't stoop Demise that far down. Or maybe he was just trying to get revenge on Link, but, like, I don't know. Just doesn't make sense. I think the Windfish just happened to have a nightmare. Windfish's Nightmare, not a reincarnation of Demise's curse. And now we get on to some of the Zelda games I'm least familiar with, but luckily aren't that deep, so it doesn't affect the video too much. Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages take place, like, right after Link's Awakening, and they have, like, a split story that also comes together to make the true definitive story. But anyway, in Oracle of Seasons, the main villain is Onox, and then in Oracle of Ages, the main villain is Varan, and if you put them together, the main villain is Twinrova, who are reviving Ganon. So, first, I'm going to talk about Onox and Varan. No. Historically, Demise's curse has always been the big bad, has never been controlled by anyone else. So, considering how Onox and Varan are pawns of Twinrova, that just wouldn't make sense for them to be reincarnations, especially considering how close together they exist. In fact, they exist at the same time. They just don't do their big evil things at the same time. But like I said before, I am counting a reincarnation happening when the previous host dies and a new host is born. Onox and Varan are not reincarnations of Demise's curse. However, Onox and Varan are not the big bad of the Oracle games. Next up, we have Twinrova, also an Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. And this is another pretty easy one. No. We see them in Ocarina of Time, existing at the same time as Ganondorf, and, you know, half of this list is riding on the fact that Ganondorf is indeed a reincarnation of Demise, and, you know, it's still pretty obvious. Twinrova are also, like, they're serving Ganon, and they're, like, working to resurrect him, so once again, being a reincarnation of Demise's curse just doesn't make sense. So yeah, Twinrova, not a reincarnation. Now, finally for the Oracle games, we have the resurrected Ganon. And now, resurrections are kind of weird. We don't really see them a lot in Zelda, mostly just a villain or hero becoming dormant and then waking up, never really dying and then being resurrected. But for the few times it does happen, it's always Ganon. So we're gonna have to think of some kind of rules regarding resurrection. So it's clearly an attempt to bring their spirit back into a physical body. But would the spirit of Ganon include Demise's curse, or would the curse have flown away in search of a new host? Well, I would say that if they had fully resurrected Ganon, he would no longer be a conduit for Demise's curse, because It is his spirit only, nothing to do with Demise, since it had flown off to find a new host, because that's kind of how I'm structuring the rules for this list. However, I believe that the resurrected Ganon in Oracle of Ages / Seasons is in fact the pure curse of Demise. It is clear that Twinrova had somehow botched the resurrection. I think the way they botched it was by reviving the curse that Demise set instead of Ganondorf's soul. So, we all know how in A Link to the Past, Ganon is, like, he's fully coherent. He talks in full sentences, he sounds really cool, he aura farms and all. But then in the Oracle games, when he's resurrected, he can only, like, string together a few sentences, like, kill all, destroy all, I am Ganon, great evil king, or whatever. That's very different to the Ganon we see in A Link to the Past. So, I know this is a bit of a wild thread to go on, but I'm going to say Resurrected Ganon, yes, is a reincarnation. In fact, is a pure reincarnation, and it is just Demise's curse with no peripheral soul to make a true villain. Next game in the timeline is A Link Between Worlds, of which the main villain is Yuga. Well, Yuga's kind of weird because he summons Ganon, which is the same Ganon as was resurrected in the Oracle games, and absorbs him, and becomes what is colloquially called Yuganon. Now, Yuganon, you know, is a reincarnation of Demise's curse. In fact, I would say it's more adjacent to what we see of Ganon in, like, Ocarina of Time and stuff, because, as my theory states, Resurrected Ganon is just the curse, and Yuga provides a soul for the curse to really live. So, Yuga by himself? No, he is not a reincarnation, because he exists at the same time as Resurrected Ganon. However, once the Ganon he summons at the midpoint of the game is. So by absorbing him, he kind of becomes a reincarnation of Demise's curse, or I guess just kind of works in tandem with it. So Yuga, not a reincarnation. Yuganon, I guess, kinda. Next game on the timeline is Triforce Heroes. A shining example of why the multiplayer games shouldn't be canon. I mean, the Four Swords games were fine-ish, I guess, but Triforce Heroes just throws everything out the window. The main villain is Lady Maud. She is not a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Reincarnations of Demise's curse tend to do things other than just lock the princess in an outfit she doesn't like. Like, Lady Maud doesn't go on any rampages, doesn't take over any kingdoms. Like, no. Lady Maud is not a reincarnation. Next up on the timeline is Echoes of Wisdom. Now, Echoes of Wisdom, while it has resurrected Ganon in it, he is not the main villain, so ignore him. The main villain is Null, and this is another really easy one. Null is not a reincarnation of Demise's curse. He's in fact older than Demise. Like, Demise lived on the planet that Zelda takes place in. Null is older than that planet, and in fact, the three golden goddesses created the planet to trap Null in it. So yeah, Null is not a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Null is older than Demise himself. Like, he doesn't need a curse to be an epic Zelda villain. So yeah, null, not a reincarnation. Next up is Zelda 1, which has the same resurrected Ganon from the Oracle games. He doesn't talk, and he just wants to kill all and destroy all. So yeah, not much to talk about here, other than the fact that Link does in fact kill him. Like, for realsies. But of course, next in the timeline after that is Zelda 2. Now, Zelda 2 is kind of weird because it doesn't really have a main villain. The villainous forces of the game is like Ganon's army who are trying to take Link's blood to revive Ganon, which doesn't make sense considering established mechanics of the Zelda universe from later games, but Zelda 2 is not a later game, so whatever. Just to have someone to talk about for Zelda 1 or Zelda 2, I'm just gonna say Shadow Link, not a reincarnation of Demise's curse, because for that to be the case, Link would have to be a reincarnation of Demise's curse, and while a Link being a reincarnation of Demise's curse and still being the hero, that would go super hard. That is not possible because he was alive at the same time as resurrected Ganon in Zelda 1. So yeah, Shadow Link, no. He's just the dark side of Link that he has to defeat to get the Triforce of Courage, not a reincarnation. And at last we arrive at the Wild Era, a completely separated bubble of games with no clear ties to any particular timeline of the Zelda series. So there seems to only be one Ganon in this, or I guess just one villain, and that is Wild Era Ganondorf, who was also the body for Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild. Well, yes, this is a reincarnation of Demise's curse. Once again, it is another Ganondorf. And other Ganondorfs seem to be carrying on the torch of being a reincarnation of Demise's curse. And in fact, with Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf, we see when he puts the Secret Stone on his forehead, and he goes into his full power mode, he looks very much like Demise. Like, I'm far from the first person to point this out, but this is just Demise wearing a Ganondorf face. Like, this... If it weren't for resurrected Ganondorf, I would say that this is like the purest form of Demise's curse we've ever seen. In fact, even with resurrected Ganon, I'm gonna kill you. Even with resurrected Ganon, I would still say that Wild Era Ganondorf may still be the purest form of Demise's curse we've seen so far. I mean, no other villain has really gone so far to copy his style. So, yes, Wild Era Ganondorf, which is the same, I guess, person as Calamity Ganon, yes, very much a reincarnation. Thank you so much for watching / listening, or however you experience this video. I enjoyed making this video. It was nice to be able to just talk instead of having to just recite a script, which, yeah, I make the scripts myself, but I don't know, it felt a lot more personal to just be able to rant about something that I like and just talk through everything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. You know the drill, like and subscribe for more, and yeah, I guess I'll make another video which you can watch in the future. So yeah, look forward to that. Bye bye.